Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits, or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, Kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Work in Progress with John Lane, Will Barfield.
Yes.
To our old ways, Will.
Doing it remotely.
Looks
like we're together, but
it does.
But we're never apart in my heart. John.
We're never apart from our hearts. That's exactly right. So some banter. A couple things. One is banter. One could be a blooper, but I'll do it as banter. I officially ended my physical therapy today.
That was for the shoulder or the knee? The shoulder.
Both. They converged after the second surgery, and we would do a little of each. And now we ended both today. So I'm very happy.
Congratulations! I had physical therapy today for my shoulder.
See, now there's a rule in Work in Progress. Not everybody knows, but one of us has to be in some kind of therapy on a regular basis. So I'm glad to see you pick up the mantle. How did it go?
It went well. It's I'm just trying to reduce some inflammation in
and what's the matter
right
with you?
Shoulder.
What's your injury?
It's just I got a bursitis. I got an angry bursitis.
Say the word.
Yeah. Bursitis.
No, the other one.
Bursitis.
That sounds dirty.
You see what I deal with here, Phil?
See what had happened was.
Yeah, I got an angry sack.
I got an angry burster sack.
Yeah, it's like we're 7-year-old boys, laughing because somebody said, like penis or something.
That's exactly right. Well, that means we're on brand. Yeah. So let's get going. I'm John Lane.
I'm Will Barfield.
And we are Work in Progress. As always, we have a special guest. Will, why is it special?
Because the slide says so.
And?
Slides never lie, even if they're wrong.
Slides
if it's
never
on
lie.
A slide, it's true.
Even when they're wrong. Phil, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
We are happy to do so. Who nominated you? How'd you get on? How did we meet you?
John came in from
Yeah. We just talked about that in the pre-show. Yeah. Awesome.
And even though slides don't lie, this one actually kind of sort of does, because he's got a different title because of a very recent career achievement.
And
so
what is that?
He's an SVP now.
Nice.
It stands for super.
Nice. Congratulations. Well, introduce yourself a little bit.
Thank you. Hey, Phil Garofalo here, currently working at Pixis International. And you guys are right. I was fortunate enough to be recognized and get promoted to SVP of Finance and CAO effective April 2024. So it's been an exciting time.
Chief Accounting Officer, right?
Yes, sir.
So if I understand it right, debits on the left, credits on the right. Is that about all you all do over there?
Sure. We'll boil it down to that.
All right.
I got a question.
Go.
What is the difference, Phil, in a CAO and a CFO? And that's not a trick question. Like, I'm asking legitimately.
Sure. I think most times you see a CAO position where you've got public companies, where you want someone to take ownership of the SEC financials in terms of the completeness, accuracy, correctness of what you're showing the market, et cetera. But the CAO typically focuses more in the internal controls, taxes, technical accounting type of areas, reporting of that to the SEC or external parties. Whereas your CFO is more in your financing, your working capital, your investor outreach, bank relationships, et cetera.
So you're the fall guy.
I'm the internal guy for the most part.
If things go wrong, talk to Phil. He's around the corner. I like that.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, that was very
That's
nice.
meaningful.
Yeah, it's completely off brand for our show, but it's good to know. Thanks for
Our listeners can learn
they
all
could
kinds of
learn. They
things.
won't, but they could. Um, I can tell you what Phil does not spend his time on.
Here it comes.
Do you want to? Do you want to do my punchline, Phil?
I'll let you do it. Oh,
Phil,
you're going to ask Phil if he wants to do it?
My LinkedIn profile.
yeah. I have got a guy who can help you, and he's quite reasonably priced. Liam, that's to throw out to you. All right, let us get into our usual show bits.
Yep.
So, as everyone knows, now I'm punting this right to you, Will. On
Yes,
this
please.
show, we talk about
Oh, OAD and
no,
unlocking
not
your
yet, not yet,
superpowers and kryptonite.
not yet.
Oh, we
What
talk
do we
about
used to be called?
what do we used to be called?
Traits.
Are you allowed to say that on air?
What is he saying?
Leadership.
Leadership traits under stress. That
Yes.
was hard.
Woo, you are sweating like Mike Tyson in a
I just
spelling bee.
believe 3 brain cells working on that. And I only had
Great.
6 left.
And then where do we get our leadership traits from?
OAD.
Yes, I'm giving you breadcrumbs.
Yeah, you are.
Would anybody
You're
believe
stale,
this?
by the way.
This is episode 63, and we're still sort of working on our dialogue here.
Well, it's a work in progress.
We
So people
we
know that
are a
coming
work
in.
in progress. That is 100% true. And to get our leadership traits under stress, we use the
OAD survey to unlock and define
and why do we use it?
unique superpower because it's easy to administer. It's so super accurate. It eliminates social desirability distortions, and it's built to the standards of all those leading international psychological institutions and rating agencies that are across the bottom of that slide, which tells you can trust the data. Phil, it's
Exactly.
good stuff. All those people
And I can
say it's
verify with
accurate.
100% certainty that Phil has audited our books and we are trustworthy
Mm.
or close enough.
You sure he audited our books?
Okay. So as we progress, as we always do, we discuss the leadership style matrix. That's how we introduce people to OAD. We have our friends, the generalists and the specialists. We also have our friends who are technically oriented versus, socially oriented versus technically oriented. I am a
Socially oriented journalist in the builder quadrant, and you're a negotiator.
and you are a
Technically oriented journalist in the architect quadrant. I'm a developer. So Phil and I are neighbors.
you are neighbors.
We are.
Phil is an independent generalist. And we're going to talk about what that means. So, welcome to our independent generalists. Okay.
Sharp slide.
Yeah, these are the ones fresh from Pakistan. So, we had them all, the new ones done. And yeah, we're an overseas conglomerate now, we're a multinational.
It was a matter of time
It
before
was
we became
inevitable.
global.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, let us discuss Phil. As everyone knows, the OAD assessment comes out like here, and we review his relative traits of assertiveness, extroversion, patience, and detail orientation. Phil's dominant traits are assertiveness and patience. He is one chill dude. He's not so extroverted. And here's what I find interesting: your detail orientation is fairly low, which means um, what does that mean? That means you may not like what you do very much. You may be good at it, but you may not like it. So that we're going to have to probe into. But independent generalists are what the name suggests. They're very independent and they do what they want. And we're glad to have you on the show. So let us get going.
And that's pretty tightly packed.
Yes.
That spread, not a very wide spread. So he's pretty, tightly packed in together. What does that typically mean, John, when they're all bunched as opposed to being,
Yeah,
greater distance?
we sometimes call that a cloudy read, but you'll notice his key ones are pretty clear. So his A and D, which is our generalist versus specialist, is
Mhm.
clear, and then his E and his D is also clear. A and P are stacked, so he is a mix of chill and also urgency. So it kind of operates with a little of both. So it's this A over D that makes him the generalist, and that. I think this would be a. I think an independent generalist has an interesting trait pattern for people in accounting and similar roles, because accounting and similar roles are very specific. There's a way to do things. Like you don't just sort of make it up. And so oftentimes we'll see more technically oriented people with that D out here.
Correct.
But
And he's on
listen,
the
it's
technical
working
side,
for
but
him.
yeah, different. And that EC, we don't talk about, the stuff across the bottom that often, that emotional control. But that's interesting that that's all the way up at a 9, with the work that he does.
He's a logic-minded dude. He
Yes, he
makes his
is.
decisions based on the facts as he sees them. And what I like about this episode so far is we're talking about him as if he's not here. So that's kind of fun.
Well, yeah, it's funny that EC stood out to me though. That logically minded decision making, fits in with the career profile.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
All right, here we go. So, uh, and
Announce our
someone
new
who,
change, though. Announce our new change.
yes. So this slide is different,
Yeah.
everyone. This is more of a readout from the output of OAD as opposed to just bulleting some traits. So we're
Yeah.
going to handle this slide and the next few differently on the show and moving forward until John changes the slides again without telling me before the
Every
show's
62 episodes, I change. So it could be a while.
So, Phil, I'm glad that you haven't left yet. That you're still hanging with us two knuckleheads on this show. Um, Architect, independent generalist, someone who takes the OAD assessment, Phil, is going to get these superpowers and kryptonite results. They come with the profile. But let's stay on the superpower side. Is there one of these, technical proficiency, strategic thinking, structured problem solving, that you feel is most accurate, most on point? It's things you notice about yourself or things that others have pointed out about you.
Yeah, for me, the structured problem solving felt like you were talking to my wife, and she told you what the answer was. So
All right. I'll check with you after the show if you want to edit that. But yeah, keep going.
Is that a compliment when she points that out, Phil?
this depends on how I made her feel that.
I love that. And then I like this because this gets to how he is a CAO. So the lower detail orientation shows up, but he's adept at quickly identifying core issues without getting lost in the minutia. Phil, I've talked to people who have this sort of personality, and they tell me they are better at this senior role than they necessarily were as like a junior accountant. Is that might be true in your world?
Yeah, I feel like I've had a lot more career success as I've been able to progress out of some of those details and been able to consistently see kind of the forest through the trees, if you will, or
Yeah.
make sure that we were looking at the substance of transactions and the substance of the guidance and not so much the form. I've had a lot more success as I've progressed in my career that way.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that is a good interpretation. So thank you.
If I
Kryptonite.
simplified that, Phil, and said, strategic versus tactical,
Absolutely.
would you say, you prefer strategic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the kryptonite side, same thing. These are the generic readouts that are going to come for anyone who is in the architect or independent generalist area. Detail overlooking, reserved interaction, conventional approach. As you study these, is there one that stands out?
Yeah, I think the people that I work with would probably corroborate the conventional approach. Not that I'm averse to imaginative or outside of the box thinking, but I do tend to take a bit of a wait and see approach to things. There's so much changing all around us. I don't necessarily prefer to seek out early adopter benefits.
I like that.
Do you find that you settle into, repeated behaviors and you like systems and, you have a formula for the way that you do things and you don't get outside of that unless dynamics force you to? Do you find comfort in that?
in certain areas. I don't know that I feel like I align fully with that statement. I think there are certain things that I like to be a little bit more rhythmic for sure. But I think I don't know that I come into work every day thinking that I've got a formula for how I'm going to operate.
Nice.
Sweet.
Good, good, good. Okay. So now let's get into a little bit more of your thoughts on what the system said about you.
So
Will?
after you took the assessment and then you were doing the back and forth communication with John, this was kind of, your self commentary. That prior slide had a lot of content on it, and you added some additional. Why don't you walk us through these and why you parsed out these thoughts, please?
Sure. When I read that previous slide, I tried to think a little bit about how did I interpret some of that information. And when it comes to technical proficiency, I think I don't necessarily represent that I know everything, and I think that no one can in my business. But I do think I'm comfortable raising my hand and realizing when I need help, and I think that has helped me well in my career. Similarly, as we talked about earlier, I feel like I am more strategically oriented, and I do tend to enjoy the art of what can be when it comes to coming up with a strategy and thinking through how that affects the organization and the team and the structures that we've built that are rhythmic. um, and then the last one to me, I think I've made my career, making order out of chaos. I've had throughout my career, I can tell you of stops along the way where things were a little bit messy and people kind of ran away, and I kind of ran into the fire a little bit because I
Nice.
somewhat enjoy that environment, and I feel like I get more job satisfaction out of being a partner to fixing some of that.
That's awesome. To what you were saying earlier, that that lower D with the higher A and delegation, that seems like it's a good trait to you. So you can figure out the situation, the problem, get the strategy down, but you're going to be comfortable if you have confidence in the people you work with that they can take it to the next step, and you're not going to get hung up necessarily in how they get from point A to point B, as long as it's within the structure of the agreement.
Yeah, that's right. And I try not to babysit people and how they try to think and how they try to activate their thoughts, because I think that in today's environment feel makes people feel restricted in what they can accomplish professionally. So if I've got people that I've hired that I'm comfortable with, I need to let them do their job.
Yeah, I like that. And that's not going to always be true, I think, of people in your world, because there's you learn to do things in a certain way, and that becomes the way instead of a way. And so I bet your folks appreciate that. That's how you run things. So let's get into the juicy stuff.
Yeah, the kryptonite. So you made these comments about, when things get tough or challenging or stressful, that these are the inverted strengths that you interpret as weaknesses. Talk us through the kryptonite notes that you've made here, please.
Sure. But when I think about the detail overlooking, I definitely have a threshold for how deep does the rabbit hole go in certain instances, and are we talking about things that are material or move the needle? And if we're not, let's get out of that and try to find our way back to something that's more material. And I think I can drive the conversation out of maybe some details we do need to go through sometimes, because my perception may be that it may not be material. And so I certainly read that and thought through where I'd done that in the past. From a reserved interaction perspective, I grew up under the auspices that you don't trust anybody but your family,
Oh,
and so I've always been very careful with what I've said and to who I've said it to over the course of my career, especially about my personal life,
yeah,
or my personal thoughts on a particular situation. And I think that can make people feel like I'm playing my cards a little close to the vest sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, and I think from a conventional approach, I touched on this earlier. I do tend to be a bit more of a wait and see on developing technologies or approaches. And as soon as I start to hear use cases that make sense, then I'm a lot more flexible thinking about the art of what can be.
I want to push on that conventional approach piece a little bit, just as it relates back to the last slide, and then our conversation about the lower detail orientation, which lends itself to greater comfort with delegation. um, you know, this wait and see that you brought up, how does that work into trusting others, you know, delegating, releasing responsibility, and doling out work. What's your wait and see period with people that you supervise to be able to trust them to deliver?
That is definitely going to depend on the environment that they're operating in. So, for example, if we're talking about a corporate accounting department where you've got someone who owns the preparation of an area with someone who's going to detail review and someone who's going to general review, I can be a lot more flexible with the kind of wait and see approach to having someone prepare a new area or having someone general review or detail review a new area, provided we put the right people around them so that this whole area doesn't now create new risk. If you're in an environment where you don't necessarily have that rigor, like maybe let's talk like finance on the financial planning analysis side, where you're not necessarily going through multiple levels of review in order to perform an analysis to advise the business.
Mm.
I think that is where I've had to make sure I'm conscientious of not being too focused on is this perfect versus is it directionally correct, and if it's directionally correct, let the team operate the way they're comfortable.
Interesting. When you hire people, what's your emphasis on? Is it knowledge, education, skills, and experience, or is that table stakes by the time somebody comes to you and you're more interested in sort of fit, communication style, and some of those softer skills?
It's an interesting question because the folks that I work with would probably tell you that I talk all the time about the first thing you look for in the interview is the attitude. I can teach debits and credits, we can teach theory and strategy, but you can't teach attitude. And so I very much look for people with what I think the right attitude is for our work environment. Um, but then I also try to make sure I'm interviewing resumes with skills that are different than mine. Because if we
Nice.
hire 25 fills, then we're going to have some deficiencies from lack of diversity of skill, diversity of thought, et cetera. And so I try to make sure that we're talking to candidates that are going to help us get better in different ways.
Yeah, Will and I coach a lot of that with our clients around diversity of thought and also understanding the sort of fit and attitude that makes sense for a role. At some point, knowledge, education, skills, and experience. Like you can pass an accounting test and prove you're good at accounting, but that seems to be table stakes as opposed to how are you part of a high performing team?
I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, good.
25 fills. That sounds like it would frighten my
Yeah,
wife.
20 25 25 films, I think, opened for the stepping on my joke. The what's the clown posse band? Anyone know that?
Was it, are you talking about Slipknot?
No, it's oh my god, I'm so old. There's a okay, I'm
I
gonna
don't
have to cut the hell out of this. There's a band called like the something clown posse. Anyway, so my joke was 25 fills sounds like the opener for that band. But if I can't think of the band and you don't know it either, then this is a horrible joke.
Yeah, that would really that just burn up in the atmosphere.
We're going to cut this one out, right?
Segue. That
Oh
was
wait,
nice and smooth.
new
So,
joke.
oh,
That
what?
sounds like 25 fills sounds like the opener for Insane Clown Posse.
There it is. I have heard of that before. Yeah. So
I'm gonna
you
have to
did
do
squeeze
some
that joke.
magic editing. No, no, I'm not. Will.
So, Phil, when we come to this slide, we want to talk about going through the assessment exercise, looking at your superpowers in Kryptonite, um, the analysis, and then what you gained and learned from that that you can apply, you know, professionally and otherwise. And I want to, I want to put a second prong on that question with you. I'd love your take on going through this process, this analysis, and how you can use everything we just surfaced. But I'd also like for you to speak to what you thought about the accuracy of the results and how closely you thought it spoke to you. So accuracy, but also application.
Yeah, it was an interesting um, first read when I got the information, and I'll give some context as to why. When I took the survey, this was some time back, and I had
It
recently
was a while
transitioned
ago, yeah.
into, sorry?
It was a while ago. We've been working on getting you on for a while now.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, regardless of how long ago that was.
Well, thank you
Um,
for hanging with us. I know you had a couple of schedule squeezes, and
yeah.
we appreciate that you hung with us.
Well, I recently transitioned from being, the company CAO to being the company CAO and working and being responsible for finance. And I've gone through the professional review process internally and learned that there were some things that I needed to adjust and adapt to be able to be more effective in that job.
Hmm.
I just had that feedback and I took the survey with that in mind and saying, okay, this is the perception in my workplace of of how I operate and how I need to adjust to be more effective in finance. And so when I read it, it was like I was on some level talking with folks inside the company, and they had made their way into this podcast interview. So it was interesting.
I'm glad it had some real world application. I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember when you took yours. It was a while ago. Um, I'm gonna write to you something after the show because there may be something of value for you. But before that, I'll just say, who's next?
Yeah. If you enjoyed this experience, Heyman thought you would come on here and be a great guest and give us some thoughtful analysis and feedback, and that's absolutely been the case. Is there someone that you can think of in your professional network that you would refer that you think would participate but also get some benefit from this?
Yeah, I mean, certainly several names come to mind, but one that kind of stands out would be Tom McConnell. Yeah,
Say
I
it
think
again slowly.
Tom McConnell. Sorry.
Tom McConnell. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he'd be a great addition to this and would get a lot of value from it.
How you know Tom?
We worked together for a few years in one of my previous employers, and we've stayed in touch over the years. A great guy. He's really progressed a lot in his career. Probably get a lot of value out of the leadership content you guys are sharing.
awesome. After the show, I'll send you a note, and we'll see if you can reach out to Tom and see if he's willing to go through what you went through, and
Awesome.
we will see. Phil, 25 Phils, all 25 of you. Hard to believe, but we are coming to the end. In fact, we are at the end.
Oh,
Once again, thank you. I know you with all your job changes and stuff, squeezing us in on an afternoon is difficult, and of course, we have zero flexibility because of this guy. So we only can record Thursday at 2. That's it. Thursday at 2. So thank you for accommodating. I am John Lane.
I'm Will Barfield, the difficult to accommodate.
Will the difficult. Amy might agree with that,
Oh,
or
sure.
Annabelle.
Yeah.
And we are
A work in progress, John.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you
very much.
Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions. Available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.